Welcome to the Mystery Poncho Crochet Along hosted by B.Hooked Crochet and Red Heart Yarns. My name is Brittany and I will be your guide throughout this entire project, and in just a few short weeks we'll have a gorgeous poncho to show for all of our efforts. Well, before we dive into the first clue, be sure to RSVP on the Facebook event page and find your written instructions at bhookedcrochet.com/mysteryponcho. That page will be your hub for this event. The clues will be released there for the next 3 Fridays, and it also links to the Facebook event page where you can share your photos, ask questions, and connect with others who are participating. Now, grab your hook and your yarn, and we'll get started right after this. First of all, I just want to welcome you to this brand new mystery crochet along from B.Hooked Crochet and Red Heart Yarns. We're going to start off clue number 1 with our color. We're only working with one color here, so whichever colorway you choose, we're going to work 2 panels. So I'm going to demonstrate how to crochet each of these 2 panels. I'm going to be using a scaled down version so you can see more of the poncho in the frame here. So working with the smaller one is a little bit easier for me. Well, the first thing we need to do is create a slip knot. So we're going to create a slip knot. Leave yourself a tail that's long enough to weave in. Place that loop on your hook. And for the number of chains, you're simply going to follow the instructions. So I mentioned I'm going to be working with the scaled down version, so I'm going to chain 20, but you want to find the number of chains that is corresponding to the size that you're making and chain that number. Now, if you're just finding this video on YouTube and you don't know where the written instructions are, you can simply go to bhookedcrochet.com/mysteryponcho. That is the hub for this entire project, and you can find the written instructions there. Once you've finished working your foundation chain, we're going to move right into row number 1. And for this row, we're going to work only with single crochet stitches. So what we need to do is find our second chain from the hook. So the first chain from the hook is the one that's right next to it. Right here, we're going to find that next one. Now you'll work your hook into that chain, and I like to work my stitches into the back bump of the chain. So I simply flip it over, insert your hook into the back bump, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 to make a single crochet, and we're going to do that for every single chain. So go ahead and work 1 single crochet into every chain. Once you've made it to the end of row 1, your work looks something like this, and we're going to move right in now to row number 2. And just keep in the back of your mind that the stitch pattern that we're working has a 2-row pattern repeat. So we're going to repeat the same 2 rows over and over until it measures a certain length, and we're starting that repeat now with row number 2. So we need to chain 3. We're going to work with double crochet stitches. Once you chain 3, you'll just turn your work. And then you need to find the next stitch. So this chain 3 counts as our first double crochet for this row. So we can't place a stitch right here where the chain 3 is coming from because we'll increase in that case. So we're going to locate the next stitch and work a double crochet into that next stitch. Now we're going to chain 1 and skip the next stitch. So we'll skip that guy right there. And then we're going to work a puff stitch. Now there are a lot of different ways to work a puff stitch. This particular one is going to be a 9-loop puff stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that next stitch. So remember, we're skipping this one. We'll work into the next, pull up a loop, And now pull it up so that it's about the same height as your double crochet. Now just hold on to those loops. We'll yarn over again, insert your hook into the same stitch, pull up a loop, and again pull that up. Do that one more time, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now with this we have 7 loops on our hook. We said we're going to work a 9 one, so we'll yarn over once more, insert our hook into the same stitch, pull up a loop, and now you can count them if you'd like, or you can simply count the times that you yarn over and insert your hook into this stitch. So we do that 4 times to get 9 loops on our hook. Then we can yarn over and pull through all 9 loops. And that completes the puff stitch, but we can't really leave it there because this is a nice open stitch and we've got all these loops just hanging out there. So we need to chain 1. And we are counting that chain 1 in our stitch repeat for the row. So we're going to skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next. And that's actually our stitch pattern repeat. We'll chain 1, make a puff stitch into the next. While we're skipping the next one, puff stitch into the next. We'll chain 1 and repeat. So skip 1, double crochet into the next, chain 1, and puff stitch. So go ahead and repeat that until you get to the end of your row. You want to leave the last 2 stitches unworked. Now, when you get to the end of your row, so I've worked a puff stitch right here, and I have 3 stitches remaining. Well, we're going to maintain our stitch pattern by chaining 1, which I've already done, and skipping the next stitch that's right in front of the puff stitch. And then, since we're on the edge here, we want to make it look the same as it does on this side. So we have 2 double crochets on the first 2 stitches, so we want to have 2 double crochets on the last 2 stitches. So that's what you'll do. You'll skip the next stitch that's next to that puff, and then we'll work a double crochet in the stitch after that. We're not chaining here. We're going to double crochet in the final stitch. All right, so that completes row number 2 and the first row of our pattern repeat. All right, moving on to row number 3 and the second row of our pattern repeat, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And we're going to work with single crochet stitches. So very much like we did here on our foundation row, but it's a little bit different because we have different things to work into. We're not just working into chains like we did at the start. So the first thing we need to do is find our first stitch. Now in this case, we're not counting this chain 1 as a stitch. We're just using it to account for that height of the stitch. So we're going to find the first stitch. You can see it right there, or you can look up at the top, and you'll single crochet in that stitch. Now the next one we have is our double crochet. Remember, we have 2 on each of the edge stitches. So we're going to single crochet into that double crochet. Now we have a chain 1 space, and it's in between the double crochet and the puff stitch. So I'm just going to insert my hook in between those 2 stitches, just in the open space, and single crochet. Now what I want to do is make a single crochet in the puff stitch. Now I personally like to insert my hook right here in this little opening right there to work this stitch. You'll single crochet. Then we're going to single crochet in the space between this puff and this double crochet. So you'll just insert your hook into the space and single crochet. Now the next stitch is a double crochet, so you'll just insert your hook into that stitch, single crochet, and we have a space here, a chain 1 space, so we're going to single crochet in the space, single crochet in that next puff stitch. And this is what we're repeating across the row. It's very simple. We just need to make sure that we have one single crochet into every stitch and in every chain one space. Now, until you get the hang of this, it's always a good idea to count your stitches at the end of the row. Make sure that your stitch count is where it needs to be. That way you're not increasing or decreasing. And when you make it to the end of your row, remember we have 2 double crochets at the end. One of them is an actual double crochet stitch. So you're going to insert your hook into the stitch and make a single crochet. But remember that last stitch is a chain 3. Now what I like to do here is just a little bit different than you normally would. Typically we would insert our hook into the 3rd chain. And you can do that. If that's what you're used to doing, that's perfect. But here's just a little tip that I'm going to give you. In this case, for this poncho, we want the edges to be a little bit more tight than if we were to single crochet here in that 3rd chain. So by inserting your hook into the 2nd chain, we're going to pull that a little bit tighter so there's not so much of a gap right there. So you'll single crochet there, and that's going to complete row number 3. So row number 4 starts our pattern repeat again. What we're going to do for row 4 is repeat row 2. So the row that we had all of the puff stitches. And just a reminder here, we're going to start this row by making 3 chains, turning our work, finding the next stitch, so not this first one, but right here, and work a double crochet into that stitch. Then chain 1, skip 1, and puff stitch in the next. And just a little visual cue for you here, you always want to make sure that your puff stitches are on top of each other. Now, if they aren't, I mean, it's okay for them to be not exactly on top of each other because we have a little bit of a shift because there's a row in between them, but it should look about like this. If it's really off, then you'll be able to tell. And what that means is that your stitch count is off somewhere. You have to rip back and find that mistake. Okay, so once you make that puff stitch, you'll skip 1, you'll double crochet into the next, and the same rules apply here. Let me finish this stitch, and you can see that the double crochets are on top of each other. So what you'll need to do at this point, you have all of the tools that you need to finish up this first panel. So you're going to repeat rows 2 and 3 over and over until your panel measures a certain length. All right, so your plan of action is to finish your swatch. Make sure it measures the length that's given in the written instructions that you can find at BHookedCrochet.com/mysteryponcho. And then once you get it to that length, you're going to fasten off after you've finished a 4th row, so a row with single crochet. You're going to fasten off, and then you're going to make a second one. We need to have 2 panels that are identical, and that is the first clue. Now, once you get to that point, the next thing I'll need you to do is wet block both of your panels. You can find the measurements that you're going to block to, once again, on the written instructions. So we're going to stretch it out a little bit in this direction, and we're going to stretch it out a little bit vertically too. That's going to help us relax the stitches, relax the fibers. We're going to get a nice rectangular shape out of that. And I know there's a few of you that might ask, is this a requirement? And technically, no, it's not a requirement, but just take note that the final measurements are dependent upon you wet blocking. So if you need help with wet blocking, you can check out a resource that I have previously filmed. You can find that at BHookedCrochet.com/blockyourproject. Basically, all you're going to do is stretch it out according to the measurements that's in the written instructions. You're going to pin it down, saturate it with water, and let it completely dry. And that's all there is to it. Once again, if you have any questions whatsoever, please direct them to the Mystery Crochet Along Facebook page. You can find B.Hooked Crochet on Facebook with the handle at B.Hooked Crochet. And from there, you can find the event page, or you can find the link to it in the written instructions. All right, guys, thank you so much. I hope you are having a wonderful time with this Mystery Crochet Along. I can't wait to share the final design with you because, as you can see here, this yarn is gorgeous and it's amazing and it feels like velvet. So I will see you next week for clue number 2. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.